Welcome to Behind the Music. Today we have our special guest, soprano Helen Hughes-Ralston.
Thank you. I was born in Baltimore, Maryland,
Hmm.
and I grew up in Towson, Maryland, which is just outside of Baltimore
Hmm.
City. I went to the Towson Senior High School.
Now, was your family musical?
Yes, my oldest brother, Robert Wallace,
I
was
know
also a
dearly.
singer.
God rest his soul.
And he and I both got interested in playing the guitar and singing, pop songs and folk music more or less
Mhm.
at the same time, although he's 4 years older than I am. So my parents, being the frugal people that they were, bought one guitar that we were supposed to share. That was when I was 13 or 14. I started taking voice lessons. Fred Petrick, who was a big teacher in Baltimore. He was a very
Yes.
well-known teacher in Baltimore,
Yes.
Fred Petrick. I went to the University of Maryland.
Okay.
So I went to the Baltimore County campus initially for my
Mhm.
undergrad, which is a Bachelor of Arts, with a music concentration. And then I went on to the main campus and got a Master of Music, vocal
Okay.
performance.
And who did you study with there?
In the undergrad, I was still a student of Fred Petrick's because he was an
Oh, good.
adjunct faculty until my senior year. And then I worked with Dr. Samuel Gordon,
Okay,
who
yeah.
was the head of the department. And then in my graduate school, I studied with Louise McClelland Urban.
When you were at the university, did you perform much?
I'm all of the Night Visitors, and I
Mhm.
sang the Mother.
Mother.
I was doing Gilbert and Sullivan stuff at that
Really?
point in Baltimore, but at that time it was Gilman Summer Theater because it was at the Gilman School, which is a
Right.
private school, boys' school in Baltimore. Did the Cadishaw again, and then I did Lady Jane and Patience, which I absolutely had a blast doing.
Mhm.
But after I did Lady Jane, Mr. Petrick said to me, "Look, you got to stop singing these contralto parts, or nobody's going to believe you're a soprano." Because we knew I was
Sure,
a soprano,
sure.
but I always had like this big, middle
Mhm.
voice, and I was like, okay. And then in grad school, we did Hansel and Gretel, and I was the witch.
Mhm.
Again, that was a little low for me, really.
Mhm.
Opera, Old Maid and the
I mean, the
Thief,
thief.
and
Okay.
I was the friend. What's her name? Pinkerton? Is that her last? I forget the character now. Miss Pinkerton or something like
Yes,
that.
Mrs. Pinkerton. Yeah, yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
the neighbor, the nosy neighbor.
Yes.
Perfect part for me. They didn't cast me as either of the Donnas.
Really?
It's a long story. I was very upset about it, but that's them's the breaks sometimes.
Mhm.
But I think part of their issue was they only had really one Donatavio. I guess they had two Donatavios, and they were both very small guys, very nice guys, nice voices, but they were, not tall. Let's put it that way. And I am me. I'm 6'1" and I'm a big girl. And I think that they just decided they wanted somebody physically that looked more, in line. And this is the opera business. This is
Yes,
show
it is.
business.
Yes.
So I did a lot of concert stuff, things like that, recital work. So yeah, when I finished grad school, I had absolutely no idea what to do.
Right.
None
Now,
whatsoever.
so how long before you got your first professional job between grad school and your first working?
Kind of bounced around and eventually did Delaware Valley Opera Company, which again is technically professional because they do pay you. But that's where I really got my first opportunity to sing like a leading lady role.
Okay.
And then that was Fiordaligi in Così.
Wow.
That probably of the roles that I have sung probably is my favorite one that I enjoyed singing the most.
Really?
And that was a really fun production. This was back when they used to perform outdoors at the mansion. If you could sing there and keep your brains going, you could sing anywhere.
So where did you go from after that? Because, you did some pretty big singing in your career.
Mid to late 90s. I did some concert work with some of the community orchestras in the area because my husband plays the violin and the viola, and he was playing in these orchestras. So this was the Delaware County Symphony, the Newark Symphony, the Immaculata Symphony.
Yes.
So these were all conducted by Roman Pavlovsky. So because my husband was playing with them, I was like, hey, do you want to do something with a singer? So I did several things with them. So the first thing that I did with them was I think this was the Delaware County Symphony. I did the Berlioz Nuit d'été, which normally is sometimes it's sung by a baritone or a contralto, but there's a higher key set, which we did. and they had a very hard time getting the higher key, the music for the orchestra in the higher key, and
Really?
asked me if I would do it in the lower key. And I'm like, no.
No.
I got around to watching the video of that performance, and I had been singing more sort of dramatic coloratura repertoire. The Berlioz is rather Wagnerian. I saw the video and I saw the whole picture because the video was back in the hall. So I heard what I sounded like from a distance. I saw what I looked like from a distance. And I was like, oh, crap, I've been singing the wrong repertoire. It was Jeffrey Miller at Opera Delaware.
Love Jeffrey.
And I went to see him and I said, so Jeffrey, I watched this, and he had been like, nudging me in that direction, had me sight reading, the Liebestod and little things like that, little hints,
Yeah, right.
I said, I think I really should focus on just the straight dramatic soprano repertoire. And he was just like, fell on the floor and was praising Jesus, thank God. She finally I went to work with Richard Johnson, who is in Bryn Mawr.
Richard very well, yes.
He had come to see a performance we did of Don Giovanni, and I sang Donana. And he came up, and I knew him already, but he came up to me afterwards, because he was very good friends with my brother. So he came up to me afterwards, and he said, you did a great job, but your voice is different you need to look at some dramatic repertoire. And I was like, funny you should say that.
Right.
Because I already figured that out. But I didn't go and study with him immediately. I kind of like ruminated on that because, as we all know, when you go work with a voice teacher, it is a very personal relationship.
Yes, it is.
Very personal relationship. You're one-on-one. And this is somebody I already knew in a social situation.
Right.
So I was like, this could become, this could be awkward.
Right.
But I thought, I will just approach this like I would going to any new voice teacher. I would give it 4 lessons. If I don't feel comfortable after 4 lessons, I will move on.
Right.
I'll do something else. Well, it was very clear after 2 or 3 lessons that this was taking me in a direction I needed to go physically to get my voice where it needed to be lined up to sing this bigger repertoire. So I needed to work with somebody who could help me figure that out.
Right.
So after I started working with Richard, which was in the year, I think it was in 2000, I started working with him. And then I decided to go and work with, I really decided to, I'm going to make a go at this.
That's right.
So, my husband at that time was gracious enough and financially successful enough that I could stop working in my part-time job that I was doing and focus completely on the singing. And I went and worked with a coach, Arlene Schrut, in New York. And I decided to go work with several New York coaches. And I was like, well, I'll get some feedback. And if they say, go back to Kentucky or Pennsylvania, as they call it, I would be like, okay. Because I thought, I was in my early 40s. So, that's up there for singers to be trying to pursue their career. But because I was singing that particular repertoire, the Wagnerian repertoire, that gives you, that's when people are coming to their prime with that repertoire usually. So but musically, and performance creds wise, I was behind other people my age at that point who had probably had, were coming from maybe higher level performance things. I did some competitions I did the Liederkranz, and I eventually won a prize in that. And I guess my thing to young singers would be, you have to be very persistent, really good at accepting negative feedback and positive feedback. Right. If I got the same, critique, let's say 3 times in a row from different people, take it seriously.
Yeah.
Whereas, because you're never going to please everybody.
When you were making that transition and you finally decided to do that, what was the actual most difficult or intensive item that you had to fix or work in to your voice?
Probably the thing that Arlene had me work on the most was rhythmic accuracy and some language things. So the idea of anticipating the beat. If you're working with a conductor and an orchestra, you actually need to be like kind of on the leading edge of what's happening. You can't let an accompanist just shove you along all the time, which is what I always. Right. Part that was, in a way, the hardest was teaching myself how to work when there was no work, handing you something to do.
Yes.
getting your 5 arias
Mm-hmm.
up and running and keeping them up and running
Mm-hmm.
is a job in and of itself.
Oh.
Keeping your voice in shape,
Mm-hmm.
taking care of your well-being, all
Yes.
of these things. And then you're schlepping, if you don't live in New York City, you're doing the schlep, back and forth and back and forth, which gets old.
Yes.
At that point in my life, that whatever, if I was successful, great. If I wasn't successful, at least I gave it my best shot.
Right.
I wanted to at least give it my best shot. So I did go to Europe in 2005, I think it was. I went to Germany and I stayed in Munich.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like family connections, friends of family helped
Mm-hmm.
me get a place to stay, things like that. And I was lucky, very fortunate to get connected with Klaus Salman, who was a
Wow.
Studienleiter at the
Yeah.
Munich Opera House and was Maida's assistant conductor.
Yes.
Luck in finding him and working with him eventually led to working at that higher level, getting a job in a production of Die Walküre.
Wow.
I was one of the Valkyries, Ortlinde, and that was with Maida and in Spain.
Wow.
And we also did the same production in Florence, Italy. And then I had gotten an agent at that point,
Mm-hmm.
and that was Robert Gilder was my agent.
Mm-hmm.
After that, but I actually got the job in Spain really just from being in the right place in the right time. That I was persistent because I went back to Germany again the next year, and that's when I actually got to sing for Maida. It was the second time around.
Right. Right. And how did you deal with the travel? Because you're a married woman. You don't have
Well,
anybody close there.
my mother was an artist, and she had an artist friend that lived in Germany. So
Really?
they connected me with someone else who had a room for rent, and that's how I found a place to stay. The American experience of going to Europe and you stay there for a while, it's pretty brutal because, first of all, I really didn't speak German. I thought I did, but no, I really didn't. Of course, being away from my husband was hard, but he's always been incredibly supportive of me, of whatever I wanted to do. He loves to play chamber music, so if he wants to go play chamber music, I'm like, yeah. I was lonely when especially in that production of Die Walküre when I was in Spain. I was there quite a while, like 2 months at least.
Yeah.
And I had a roommate, and we became good friends. But I really missed my husband, and there were periods of time where I was alone, for quite a while, and didn't really ever speak Spanish that well. I mean, I kind of do the rudimentary stuff, but.
Sure.
There were long periods of time where I was alone, and there was a lot of difficulties in that production. When I went there, I really didn't have a contract. They just said, "Are you available?" And I said, "Yes."
Wow.
And what are the dates? And I just showed up.
No kidding. Wow. Wow.
But eventually, of course, I did get a contract, which is a whole long story. But new opera house, and the intendant Helga Schmidt was quite a character. And Jennifer Wilson was the Brunhilde, and she was really Helga's one of her proteges. Jennifer was. But I became good friends with Jennifer too. She's a very, very nice person, and we've kept in touch. But it's the whole experience of going there and staying. I think it was in some ways hard, and in other ways really wonderful.
If you had a go-to singer that you wanted to listen to, you wanted to see how a role was sung or interpreted, who would that singer be, or singers?
The singers from the 50s and 60s that I love were Joan Sutherland and Leontine Price. I wasn't a big fan of Nielsen until later, until I started getting into the Wagnerian repertoire of interpreting a role. I think I might say Kirsten Flagstad, actually.
Of course. Yeah. If you had one performance or one magical moment where you felt that everything couldn't have gone more perfect and you walked off the wings and you were about 4 foot in the air, what would that performance be and what was it?
Say the first time that I sang with orchestra some of the Isolde. I sang the narration and curse and the Liebestod, and and it was a good performance. Was it perfect? No.
No.
but the energy, there's never a perfect performance. Energy and the combined focus that everybody brought into it.
Yeah.
It's for me a special memory.
Most people don't get that. You are probably one of the few singers that I have never actually sung with that I remember.
I don't think we have performed together, but I've seen you perform. I'm pretty sure. It was Pagliacci.
Oh, Pagliacci's were, that was Bohèmes and Pagliacci's paid for the house. So
yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I've heard you sing for years, and
really.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes, I was astounded, and I didn't know that you were Rob's sister until after. In closing, what I want to ask you is, you've had a really vast career of different music. What would you tell a young singer today in today's era and in the situation that we're in right now? What would you recommend for them to do to prepare once they leave that academic setting?
Well, I will tell you right now what I have observed of young singers who are having to take their voice lessons remotely is that they have lost their connection to their support, their breath support in their body. Because they're singing in a small space, maybe their bedroom, maybe a studio, something very small, and they're singing into a microphone that's connected to a computer or an iPad or something like that. So they're not getting that feedback from a teacher who's in the same room with them, who's saying, okay, that's a nice tone, but you need to breath support it more, get it into your body. That they're creating a sound, and this isn't all of them, but this is what I've observed with a lot of the younger singers. They're creating a sound that is just off the vibrato gets too fast. They get a flutter, or they've got some pitch issues, things like that. And all of which, when they get connected into their body, will just sort itself out. And that getting connected into your body is, in my opinion, a very individual experience.
Yes.
It's going to feel different for every person. So I would say to a young singer, as soon as you can get a place to sing, where you can go sing with a person, either a coach or a teacher, in a larger space.
Yes.
If you belong to a church, use the sanctuary so you can hear your voice in that bigger space and see feel what's required of you physically to get your voice out in that bigger space. And also it's the energy expenditure. So that would be my advice to the young people coming out of school, and the people who have spent some time really working on their singing, on their repertoire, whatever, during this lockdown, this period of quarantine, this period of being so isolated, they're going to come out with an advantage when they get a chance. Some of the people that have done this masterclass, they're going to come out and be ready. That the kids maybe are not getting exposed to some of these early singers, partly because they tend to use social media and YouTube and things like that. And although those singers are out there more now, are the singers that we would want to hear, the old timer singers, which really wasn't that long ago. They're taking voice lessons, but I can't say that you can always blame a teacher, but a teacher can say, hey, I think you should listen to so-and-so. Is the kid going to do it? You don't know if they will or not.
Right. But at least give them the opportunity to make their own culture.
I remember Richard used to do this. They would have, like a group class on a weekend sometimes. And he would do this game where he would, drop the needle on a recording. You were supposed to name who the singer was.
Isn't that something great?
Right.
Wow.
And, I could always recognize the old singer. I heard them. I knew it was.
In closing, Helen, I think, I have been a big admirer of your singing.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I am honored that you were part of Masterclass, and I can't thank you enough for dedicating your time, your spirit, your instruction, and most of all, your heart to us. And I'm greatly honored, and I love you dearly, and I can't say thank you enough. So
Well, thank you for asking me to be part of it. It has been really a joyful experience for me. Not just hearing all the young singers that are so talented, but also just getting to know some of your other connections, the other people on the panel, some of whom I know and some of who I don't. And getting connected with some of them has been real interesting and fun
thank
too.
you.
Know
Thank you.
you better,
Oh,
and
well,
you and Joan
thank
both.
you again. I greatly appreciate it. Have a
You're
great
welcome.
day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Ciao,
Bye
baby.
bye. Ciao, ciao. Today, we have dramatic tenor John Horton Murray with us. A dear friend, a great colleague, someone I know for a long time, and I respect as a singer. John, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
I have a few questions. Where actually did you grow up?
Well, my parents, I guess, grew up in Queens, New York.
Mm-hmm.
And then my father was over because he was drafted in the Army, and he decided to start his career as an opera singer over there.
Wow.
And so I grew up in Germany, son of an opera singer.
I came from a music family. You have a large talent in brothers sing, your children
Right.
sing. It's been passed down. It's 3 generations that I know of.
Right,
So,
right.
What attracted you to music at a young age?
Oh, well, I was playing the piano, and I just loved the music. You know, I always say there's great music in opera, classical, pop, Broadway, whatever. There's great music everywhere. I love it all.
Okay. How old were you when they noticed that you actually had musical talent?
Well, I was playing the piano, and then I joined the choir, I guess, in 7th grade, when I was in 7th grade, my voice had changed already, and so I started singing in the church choir, and I really enjoyed that. And of course, we did like the Messiah, and I loved that music. So, but even before that, I would say in music class, like we had listened to St. Matthew Passion as 13 or 14-year-old, I thought that was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Sure.
also because I spoke German, of course. So for me, to say Matthew Passion is like hearing the Messiah. It's like,
Right.
you know,
Exactly.
I understand it, you know.
Mhm. I guess you're just starting to come into your teens. You play the piano. What actually got you into singing?
But then I just realized I loved singing, and so I did. In high school, I did a lot of shows where I sang solos and stuff. So I loved it. And they didn't do shows like musicals. It was more like cantatas.
Okay.
Christmas cantatas, you know, recitals. I remember singing a bunch of songs and recitals, you know, in high school there. High schools in Europe are more bare bones, where there's no music department, there's no sports department, there's no lunch, there's nothing.
Really?
You know, it's just get the 3 hours and you're out the door at 1 o'clock. You know,
Wow.
It's different than here.
Yeah, obviously. So when did you get back to the States?
Well, then I basically came to the States to go to college.
Okay.
And so
your father was still in Germany, correct?
Yeah, they were still living in Germany. Right. And I mean, every summer we were at our house in the Catskills.
Gotcha.
My parents had a house in the Catskills besides, you know, living in Berlin, Germany. And so, also my father sang at a little festival up in Art Park, New York, which is above Niagara Falls.
Uh-huh.
I was in the chorus there, in the opera chorus. So that's what some of my first experiences there. And then I ended up going to Potsdam because at the time, Potsdam the tuition was $395 a semester. And I also auditioned, I think, at Eastman, and it was like $4,000 a semester. And I thought, well, no way that education could be 10 times better.
Right.
You know, so my advice I always give people is, you know, the main thing is try to find a place with good voice teachers. But you might as well go for a cheap undergrad, because then you're almost always going to go to graduate school as an opera singer. And then I went to Curtis, so I always say, oh, I was at Curtis, or like my son can say he was at Yale. You know, he's not going to talk about when he was at Stony Brook. You know, he's going to say he was graduated from Yale. The same way I say I'm graduated from Curtis. So I would say don't spend a lot of money on an undergrad school. You know, don't go to, I don't know, you know, some private school and pay $50,000 a year for undergrad music. That's ridiculous.
Right.
That's a ridiculous amount of it. You can go to a state school, get great music theory, get great music history, hopefully have a good teacher, you know, hopefully they teach you sight singing, sight reading, or piano. Yeah. And that's one thing I did think about Curtis was smart. They made all the voice majors take piano because there's only 2 ways you can learn how to sight read. One is to learn it theoretically. That's very hard.
Yes.
That's with the solfege and all that. That's crazy hard. The other is you just play the piano, and then you kind of know where the pitches are. Like this is C, I know where E is, I know where A is, I know where F is, I know where C is. You know, I mean, you just know it because you've played it so often on the piano.
Sure.
You just know where the pitches are and what the rhythms are and everything, you know. So for best thing you can do as a young singer in high school is take piano lessons.
You went to Potsdam. Who did you work with there?
There was a great teacher there. Her name was Pat Mislin. And also I had another guy, an opera singer that had been singing in Europe for 30 years and was there. And I had him first for a year, and then he moved on somewhere else.
Okay.
But his name was George Fourier. But also I was working with my father every summer. So really he was my voice teacher from high school through undergrad. Did you find that difficult working with your dad? No, I didn't. I just have that personality where I'm content wherever I am. Most kids cannot take voice lessons from their father or mother. They can't. Agreed. Graduated, and you did your undergraduate. And now you're ready. How did you pick Curtis? Was it because the tuition cost was zero? Always very cost conscious, I guess, as a young person. And so good for you. I went with my cheap undergrad school. I went, oh, Curtis, no tuition. I'm going to audition there. Yeah, so I got my master's degree from there because, it costs nothing. Right. Okay. And who did you work with while you were at Curtis? Her name was Raquel Adenailo. She was very good. Yeah, she was the first one because I was a baritone for all this time, and she was the first one to say that, oh, no, you're definitely a tenor. You know? Yes, I was just going to get into that. You worked all this time as a baritone, and I remember we sang together as a baritone. Right. You were a baritone. Yeah, I was Marcello, and you were a Corride, right? Yeah, and that's right. I moved up a step because, what happened? Short got sick, and then they yanked me, and
special place, Cape Cod Lyric
Oh,
Opera.
hey. Oh,
Yes, very special memories
very
there.
special.
How did that feel? Did you know? Did you agree with her? Did you fight her on it?
I was, at the time, I was only like 22.
Right.
I was just up, my first year in graduate school, and our second year, actually. So I was 23, and I was married, and it just, it was hard to sing the big stuff. And so that's the real problem with Helden tenors, is that they're better off actually as baritones till they're 25, because, we don't have the Barberina role, for tenors, for
Right.
Helden tenors.
No.
We just don't.
No.
In opera. It's either the big role or it's, compromise, which you wouldn't do, So there's no, like baritones, sopranos, they all have small roles in the operas they can
Yes.
do.
Yes, I agree.
Especially the dramatic tenors, and even the lyric tenors have some, secondary roles, or character parts and all that. But a dramatic tenor, what are you going to sing that's an easy role at 22? Nothing.
Right.
When I started out, people said to me, "Oh, you're going to sing a bunch of French stuff and Czech, and like Czech repertoire." And that's true. When I started out, I sang
Really?
like José, I sang Animation of Faust, I sang Madame Butterfly, stuff like that,
Really?
because as a Helden tenor, you're not really ready to sing the big stuff until you're like 30. 30, then I did Wagner and everything.
How old were you when you actually decided this is when I make the switch?
A long time, because then after Curtis, then I went to the Lyric Opera Center in Chicago. The guy there insisted, "Oh, no, you're definitely a baritone." Because I had, a big
Yeah, you did. Yeah.
sound, and so, they think couldn't be a tenor. Doing a master class with Piero Cappuccilli,
Wow.
1987. And I sang the Largo, where I would interpolate all these high A's and G's and hold them forever, and, because I'm not a baritone. And he said to me, to the other baritone, Patrick Robleski, he said, "Oh, yeah, this or that." And then when I sang, he said, "Non è un baritono." Then I said that to the opera center, because they were all confused, because
Sure.
they didn't know what to do. So then actually I was, I switched then to, I just decided after I was done there, I just, okay, I'm going to be a tenor. And I just auditioned. Literally, I had done the Met competition as a baritone for a couple of years and got to the finals in New York. And then the next year, I decided, okay, I'm switching to tenor. Forget it. Piero Cappuccilli says I'm a tenor. No, I've always sang baritone arias, but interpolating high C's, at the end of the Largo and stuff.
Right.
So in any case, I auditioned for the Met again, because you could, as a winner, you could audition for another grant for money. And at the time, I didn't have any money, so I was like, yeah, I'll audition for another grant. Now I'm a tenor. The funny thing is, so I go in there and I sing, and they're like, "Wow, you're a tenor," And so then they had me audition for the Met Young Artist program. But I came in and I said, "I'm sorry, I only know 2 arias," because I had just switched. I sang like Nessun Dorma and something else, because I didn't, I could sing like 10 baritone arias, but
Right. Jeez Louise.
and so I only knew 2 for my Met audition for the Young Artist program.
That's something.
And then I worked with Ruth Falcon in New York,
Yes.
and then I worked with John Fiorito later on, who was really
Right.
great.
Yes.
Great teacher. He's the only reason I could sing Forza and all the big Verdi roles later. He really got my voice in a good place.
How did you find the Young Met Artist program? Or did you feel comfortable
No, it
there?
was because soprano was leading the program back then. Gail Robbins, and she was sweet, and she really wanted to help. And the Met program is very, very generous. I mean, they bought me a tux, they bought me tails.
Wow.
They, they pay you to take lessons. They pay for your lessons.
Sure.
So it was. I wanted to study with Franco Corelli, but the Met wouldn't let me.
Really?
Yeah, because he was my idol. I loved him.
Of course.
I actually met him at a dinner once in New York, so that was the thrill for me.
Wow. Now, besides your father,
Yeah.
who were your idols as a singer? Who did you really identify with their singing?
I grew up in the era of Pavarotti,
Mhm.
and nobody has ever had as free a sound for us guys as he has.
I agree.
I mean, I've heard a few baritone basses that also had a wonderful free sound, but like Sam Raimi, But for us tenors, there's hardly anybody that really gets to that point.
Yes.
Even Domingo, is not as free as Pavarotti. I mean, just that free sound.
Yeah.
And that's what we all aim for, is to get that total And basically, I remember a bunch of tenors sitting in the Met cafeteria back in the 90s, and we were all talking about technique, and we all agreed the tongue is the enemy. The tongue loves to help. It loves to tense.
Yes.
And you're singing, and it's also, I think it's natural because we're not used to creating that much air pressure. You know, as I always give the example, when we're babies, we have perfect vocal pronunciation or production, I should say.
Yeah.
And then as opera singers, we basically try to get back to where we were as babies.
Babies. Correct.
That where we're connected and we're not, have any tension anywhere, because they just go, wah!
That's the truth.
They don't do that. They go, wah! That's how I always teach my students, you have to be like a baby, get the sound out that way,
That's a great analysis. That really is.
But think about the baby's this big, and how loud is it?
Very, especially my daughter. Wow.
Talk about good vocal production.
You're not kidding. You got married young, as I did. How did you find the road when you were away?
I really want to talk about that. Yeah. The main thing is I've heard so many people say when they got there, they were lonely and all that stuff. And so, every place where an opera company is usually an amazing city. Like if you're in Berlin or let's say somewhere in Italy, there's incredible museums to go see. There's incredible, if you want to watch sports, go see a game. There's always great stuff to do. Now, I would suggest that if you're on the road a lot, start to get a couple hobbies that you can do on the road. Like I got into, when I was in Utah, people there took me to the genealogy library in Salt Lake City. And so that was back in like 95. And so I got into that. So every place I was, and especially when it was Scotland, I did all the genealogy research on so I would say a good hobby like that, what you can do in all your hours that you're just sitting around on the road, is a great thing, because especially now with the internet, you can constantly do all the research right online. Right. And it doesn't have to be that. Do whatever. Figure something out you can do besides watching TV, Figure out something that you can do that piques your interest. Maybe it's history. Maybe it's who knows what. And you also have to have the mindset, I realize, that you realize this is a great opportunity rather than thinking like, I'm stuck. And I remember people would say to me, but some places stink. Well, every place I've been, I've found amazing things.
There you go.
In St. Louis, people say, what did you find there? Well, I found the biggest pre-Civil War collection in the world, because a big barge sank once, and then they drug it up in the 80s, and it had the biggest collection of like porcelain from Germany, and there's all stuff people were taking up the Mississippi to their homestead, but the thing sank.
Right.
And so even in the smallest city, sometimes you find a gem of a collection. Actually, that was in Kansas City. Yeah. Kansas City. There, you get this incredible pre-Civil War collection of artifacts. Biggest in the world. You never know. If you look around in each city, you never know what you're going to find. Enjoy where you are, especially Europe. My goodness, there's so much to see.
If you had to identify with a role, this is a two-part question. What role did you actually really identify with emotionally, personally, and vocally?
I mean, the role that's most like me is a role I sang a lot, which is Stolzing in Meistersing. He's just a nice guy that comes in and can sing a good song, and he wins the contest and wins the girl, that he loves. So I mean, that's me.
Okay.
In most of the operas, as a Helden tenor, you're playing some god,
Which you are, right?
But you're rather full of himself,
Right.
But you just have to learn to, to take that, to be that. But that's not me. I mean, Stolzing in Meistersinger is really me. That's really me. But the role I did the most was Bacchus in Ariadne. Yeah.
Wow.
I did 15 productions.
Wow. Jeez.
About half in the States and half everywhere else.
That's a bitch. Wow.
Yeah. Oh. Luckily, it's only like 20 minutes long.
I
used to count in the Strauss rolls how many high notes you have, and like in Bacchus, you have like 15 high B flats to sing, and like it's crazy.
What did you? And it could have been anything. What have you sung where you walked were walking off the wings and you were 4 foot high, that everything just went perfectly. Could you think of that role and what it was? Or if there were
emotionally, I'm a Christian, and so the opera Parsifal, if you understand the German.
Absolutely.
And you're playing Parsifal, and you're baptized, third act, but also the music. And if you really understand it, that's people, for years here listen to Wagner, but they don't realize the philosophy in it is so amazing.
Yes.
Tristan is just a huge, what do you want to call it, sexual, experience.
Right.
And then this is just totally, Parsifal is totally a religious experience.
I believe.
And I literally, it's the only time I've actually like left my character and
that's something.
I just float away because the music is so amazing. And it's not what I'm singing; it's what Gurnemus is talking about.
Yes,
right. It's so Parsifal is really an amazing experience.
Wow.
That role, I would say, I love the most. Part that is the most interesting that I ever did was Gatamon, Queen of Spades.
Wow, seeing that, I didn't make that.
Because to me, all the music has different flavors. The French is floaty, the German is powerful, the Italian is romantic and powerful, and then the Russian music is rough and raw.
Okay.
So what I loved about Russian music is that even though it took me 4 months to learn the stupid roll,
really?
Like a Wagner roll, I could learn like in a month because I speak German, But this, I don't, because Google Gaga language. Ja doesn't mean yes; it means I.
Right.
And da doesn't mean there, like in German. It means yes. Raw emotion in Russian music, and because I had done a few cantatas and stuff like Stravinsky and whatever, but Tchaikovsky,
right,
Krasavitsa, Marie, that kind of Russian raw emotion. It's unlike any other music. I really recommend it, even though it's so hard to learn.
It is very difficult. Now, you've had this vast career. I mean, you were overseas. You sang in the United States. You sang for Chicago. You sang with the Met. Going back now, we're going to revert a little back to your turning when you first started to turn professional.
Yeah.
What do you feel that you had to work on the most, be marketable?
Of course, you have to find a good voice teacher, and you have to learn how to sing.
Right.
We won't cover all that. But you do also really have to learn to pronounce the three main languages, i.e. German, Italian, French, in that order. Most of the work is in the German-speaking countries.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's like 70% of the opera work in the world is in Austria, Germany, and Switzerland. And the other 30% is the rest of the world, So learn German, but you have to learn how to pronounce it perfectly. So that's the thing. I mean, it's really a big thing that we do. We learn how to sing, we learn how to sight read.
Right.
We learn how to pronounce these three languages. It's a big study. The thing that they work most on me in the Met, for example, is like French pronunciation or Italian pronunciation. Because I spoke German. So I would say once you're done with your grad degree, make sure your pronunciation is perfect.
Right.
Because besides sing, that's the only thing they can say, like, well, it's not German, or it's not French, what you're singing. So that's the most important thing, I would say. It has to be there. Yeah. Right.
Now, listen, we know each other probably better than I don't even want to say how long. It's over 40 years. So
right.
One thing I have to say about you, John, that I was always in admiration is your musicality. Because everybody that we've had on Masterclass, I've had either a personal relationship, colleague, or but most of all friends. You were actually probably the best singing musician I have ever met in my life. I have to say that, and this is not to throw bouquets at you because I hate you really, but
but really what that comes down back to is you have your own innate musicality.
I've never heard you. Miss a beat. We worked together when I listened to you. I mean, the first time that I actually heard you sing, you were doing, was it The Mask of Angels? Was it not? did you with Sean Deibler? Do you remember that?
Oh, right.
That's
Yes.
the
Yes.
very first time, and that was in the 80s that I
Right.
actually heard you. And then right after that, you did the C minor mass.
Right. Right.
And I said to myself, I said, wow, this guy is something. And of course, we were friends and, we became friends from there. You have always been an inspiration because of course, you're 40 years older than I am. I had to get that in. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I've always been an inspiration to
Well, thank you. Thank
sing.
you.
I
You're
think,
too kind.
and I more than that, I always admired your friendship. I've held it in high esteem. There's not many people that you could say, they don't have to see each other for 5 or 10 years and come back, and then we're 22 years old again, because we come right back to that. And that's one of the things that I think are lacking with singers today, is that there's too much cattiness, that you don't allow yourself to be vulnerable. Because listen, at that time you were singing as a baritone, I was a baritone. I was so happy when you sang well, not just because you were a friend, because you just wanted to enjoy good singing. And that's what it is. I mean, there was never any animosity. There was never, a jealousy. I never felt that way. Never. And I'm sure you didn't feel that way about me, but it's just that lack of respect and camaraderie, that is missing today, that would make life so much easier and learning so much easier. I get
There's no sense of being jealous or critical.
Oh,
it really isn't.
I never had a jealous bone in my body.
There's no point to it. There's no point.
No.
It doesn't help you as an artist get better. It really doesn't. And I understand, when you're young, you want to keep going, but just keep working on your craft.
The same thing with Hogan. I said, if you did something really well and special, that I said, it just clicked in my, you go back to the practice room and you try and emulate it, or try and work it into your voice. You go run back and you say, I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do that.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't see that today. I don't see the work ethic and the history.
But the camaraderie is maybe missing.
No.
Okay. Well, that's the whole thing with computers and everything now. It's funny. We had a lot more contact back then, because, if we wanted to do something, my friends would call and say, "Hey, let's go over. Let's come over to my room and we'll listen to Turandot." And we all would gather there and blast Turandot in the dorm room, and we'd all listen to it. Now the kids, they each have their multimedia experience right in front of them.
Worst thing in the world. As far as
for our business,
I agree. But on the same token, we had to go back to the research library and put on our headphones and listen to something and learn it and devour it. And you would sit there for hours and hours and hours. They could sit back in their bedroom and put this on and listen to access any singer that has ever recorded anything.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And they don't
used to have to know somebody that had these records.
Oh,
no money for records. I mean, I had a little small collection.
It's really a shame, because I wish people could experience what we did when we were younger through our careers. I have to say, John, in closing, that you've always been an inspiration, as I said before. I mean,
you're too kind.
No. I listen. I'm not saying because you're here. I've always felt that way.
Thanks.
You're, as a person, I mean, you're as genuine. Your singing is as genuine as your personality. You never had an air. I always thought that you were a brilliant musician. And you came on board with Masterclass. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you give so much of your knowledge to these young tenors and young singers of Masterclass.
It's my pleasure. So thank you.
And I thank you. And what I want you to do is give Louise a big hug and kiss from me, because as soon as we can, as soon as possible, let's get together, because I miss you guys. And
I miss seeing you and Joni. So
it'll
be fun as soon as this wonderful hiatus